Good afternoon and welcome to the Friday Potluck, where just like a real potluck, you're going to get a little bit of everything. You'll get a few tastes of politics, both local and national. You're also going to get some weather, again, local and national because of that big storm that we've got hitting the East Coast. Plus, we're going to sit down with gold medalist Keegan Randall. I'm very excited about this. I'm a huge Keegan fan. Talk a little bit about the upcoming Olympics and how 8 skiers with Alaskan connections are on the U.S. cross-country ski team. Very excited about that. We're going to hear about that. And then to top it off, we also have Jackie Purcell with her picture Alaska. And we're going to talk a little bit about the price of gold and silver because that is a hot topic as well. But lots of fun stuff along with a little bit of serious, and that's how we are going to start. This past week was the first week of the legislative session down in Juneau, and just last night, Governor Mike Dunleavy gave his State of the State address. Here's political reporter Will Courtney with the wrap-up of the night.
In his final State of the State address, Governor Mike Dunleavy promised to push forward a plan to help alleviate Alaska's fiscal economy, but all at the same time, he left out a key detail, that sales tax he proposed to reporters last week. He now says legislation's on the way.
I know that each element of the fiscal plan that I'll introduce will have its detractors. There'll be those that'll say it doesn't work. But the fact of the matter is, the numbers and the elements of the plan could work.
The governor also promised part of that plan will protect permanent fund dividend checks.
The reality everyone in this room understands is that we can't continue to fund government by shrinking the PFD, which was the smallest in history adjusted for inflation this past year.
Governor Dunleavy also touted a major breakthrough on the Alaska LNG pipeline.
Before my administration, the Alaska LNG project was floundering, and AGDC was nearly broke. Under my administration, we secured funding from North Slope producers to finish the permitting, and we defeated challenges to the project in court. Today, we are on the cusp of realizing a decades-old dream of delivering abundant, affordable energy that will benefit all Alaskans.
After the speech, some lawmakers were skeptical, saying they needed more details about a budget plan and how pipeline financing will work.
Well, we haven't heard the details on that. The governor has said he'll provide a fiscal plan. We had hoped to hear more details tonight, but I assume that's coming. You know, the governor earlier, when we were talking about the fiscal plan, he was talking about 6 or 7 or 8 bills, something like that, and now he's talking about an omnibus bill, that everything is rolled into one bill.
Here in the Capitol, that leaves lawmakers with a lot on their plate and a lot of questions. That being said, Governor Dunleavy does plan to push forward a fiscal plan next week. Will Courtney, Alaska's news source.
And we do keep up with not only our local but national politics. And you might want to check out, if this is what you're interested in, check out Alaska's Political Pipeline. That is our podcast. Most recently, Will Courtney reported on what we're expecting out of the new legislative session. Plus, he's recently spoken with House Minority Leader Delina Johnson and looked into the race between former Representative Mary Peltola and incumbent Senator Dan Sullivan. Check all of that out on Alaska's Political Pipeline. And we've been talking about not only what's going on in Alaska, but also down in the United States. So one of our digital people, Josiah Pike, sat down with Peter Zampa to get the latest on what's happening today.
As always, a busy week in Washington. Joining us now is our senior national correspondent, Peter Zampa. Peter, the annual March for Life rally took place in Washington today. Who do we hear from and what was the message?
Well, Josiah, the headliners, you have to say, were the President of the United States, Donald Trump, via recorded message, and Vice President J.D. Vance in person, speaking to the thousands of marchers. Now, the March for Life has been going on for decades, since Roe v. Wade was law of the land. It has since been overturned, but they continue to march. This White House likes to remind these folks that they put the Supreme Court effectively in place to overturn Roe v. Wade. And they're also talking about what they're doing currently. President Trump talking about the so-called Trump accounts, effectively a savings account, $1,000 for kids who are newborns, trying to up the birth rate in this country. It seems to be a big push from this administration. In fact, on that note, Vice President Vance once again talking about his own efforts. They just announced that they're going to have, he and the second lady are going to have a 4th child, announcing that a couple of days ago. The president also saying that He's trying to ban any federal dollars from going to domestic or international organizations that support or carry out abortion services. Now, on that note, Josiah, the president has taken some pushback from the anti-abortion community as of late over comments that he made a few weeks ago to House Republicans trying to get a health care bill across the finish line. He said they may have to be flexible on the Hyde Amendment. Now, this is a long-standing, decades-long-standing law that prohibits any federal dollars from going to abortion services. It's really a non-starter for the anti-abortion community to say that you can be flexible when it comes to the Hyde Amendment. It's a cornerstone of their anti-abortion policies. That being said, many anti-abortion organizations still support the president and all of his efforts, including what he mentioned today.
Right, now, government officials are preparing for this massive storm that's barreling down across much of the Midwest and the East Coast. What are we hearing from federal officials?
Yeah, the Trump White House says they are naturally monitoring this potentially historic storm. Anytime you talk about history, you want to be prepared for this. They say they're staging FEMA, specifically in Louisiana. They've got hundreds of thousands of meals prepared, they say. They've got hundreds of thousands of liters of water. They've got shuttle buses ready to go. They've got go teams all over the country ready to assist. And it's important that it's in that part of the country because this isn't Anchorage, Alaska in the south. These folks aren't used to getting hit by potential ice storms like this, where you could see significant power loss as well. And on that note, this is a key priority for the administration right now, is making sure that we have generators ready to go. The Department of Energy says they're trying to access 35 gigawatts of unused backup generator power to make sure that if folks do experience power loss, it's not for as long as it could be, because that's when you start to get into a very dangerous situation. So a whole of government approach the Trump White House says they are using to make sure that while this may be historic, that the pain is limited.
Now, Luigi Mangione, who's the man accused of killing former United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson, was back in federal court today. Peter, what was the purpose of today's hearing?
Josiah, this was a suppression of evidence hearing. His defense team, both in his state case and in this federal case today that could potentially carry the death penalty if he is found guilty, they're trying to get back this backpack at the center of this case dismissed from evidence because they say the way Altoona, Pennsylvania police arrested Mangione and McDonald's 5 days after he allegedly killed Thompson and went through his backpack without a warrant, without reading Mangione his rights, they say that this was improperly done, it is illegal, and it should not be allowed to be used by the prosecution in this case. So today, the judge, the prosecution, the defense questioned a deputy chief of police from Altoona to talk about their protocols, their procedures when it comes to searching these kinds of backpacks or whatever may be evidence on the scene. They say that they do this to make sure that there's nothing dangerous in this backpack. They don't want to open it and see that there's something that could cause imminent danger to the surrounding area. That's why they go ahead and do this. So they say the prosecution maintains they're just following their procedures in Altoona. The defense says this is a violation of Mangione's rights. This is a key part of all of these cases. If this evidence is allowed to be dismissed, that's going to put a huge dent in the prosecution's case.
Senior national correspondent Peter Zampa, thanks for the good report.
And very interesting stories there from Peter. And yes, as he pointed out, that storm hitting the East Coast, you know, they're not used to this, not like we are here in Alaska. Speaking of Alaska, though, we are going to see some change of the weather headed our way, particularly here in the southern portion. So after we take this quick break, when we come back, Chief Meteorologist Melissa Fry is going to fill us in on what's happening at the start of next week. Okay, cool. And welcome back to your Friday Potluck. Again, just a little bit of everything, but we really do want to focus on this weather because you look outside, it is clear, it is calm, it is beautiful. That's going to change.
That is going to change, at least for a little bit of time. Yeah, we do have another storm that's pushing in Monday. So we do have a first alert weather day for Monday, 4 days from now. So we have a lot of time to prepare and adjust to the change in the weather. But we do have a snowstorm coming in. So I'll show you those details again. That first alert weather day is just our way of giving you that early heads up that, hey, this is going to change. Snow is looking pretty likely and some heavy snow on Monday. Normally, we're not going to issue a first alert weather day for snow specifically in Anchorage unless it's at least 4 inches, which right now I am expecting that up to half a foot of snow or so is possible for Anchorage on Monday, starting Monday morning, continuing into early Tuesday morning. And then this will likely also push Anchorage. This storm, and maybe we have that in a second, but we are just over 5 inches away from Anchorage setting the snowiest January on record, which can you believe that?
No.
Okay, so Aaron Morrison pulled that data this morning and he told me that was the case, and I was like, really, are you sure? So I double checked the data because it just doesn't feel like it's been that snowy this January.
But January is not our snowiest month either. So
yes,
typically.
it's true. So yep, we are pushing again close to the snowiest January on record. Now I want to start with a time lapse. One, just because it's so beautiful with the weather pattern we're in. You see a little patchy fog floating through. The fog is such a nuisance, but it makes the trees beautiful. You get that rime ice on the trees, and it just flocks everything in white. So I do love that. Just be mindful. Fog, of course, is a source of moisture, so it is creating some additional ice on the roadways. But otherwise, sunny conditions. But look at those clouds, Tracy. You know what those clouds are? Those are cirrus clouds.
yeah.
And anytime you see cirrus clouds, that's an indication that we're starting to see some changing weather. Cirrus clouds, they're the thinnest clouds and they're the highest in the atmosphere. They are made of all ice. And if you just imagine for the moisture in the air to get all the way to nearly the top of the atmosphere, that tells you something's going on. There's some dynamics there that air is being forced up, and that is because we're just starting to see some changes in the weather pattern. The other thing that will show you when there's changing weather or impactful weather is to look at the wind and to look at the shape of the winds. So right now we have some really high wind gusts as you head out into Shemya, gusting to 62 miles per hour, Cape Lisburn up to 58 miles per hour. We've got that big area of low pressure anchored in the far western Aleutians, but relatively calm conditions across the rest of the state. But because of those strong winds that are being pushed through the Bering Strait region, we had wind gusts close to 70 at Cape Lisburn yesterday. We do still have winter weather advisories in effect just north of the Baldwin Peninsula, up close to Wainwright, and that's because of snow and blowing snow. We've also been watching some high winds just east of Delta Junction, and then air quality alerts in Fairbanks because it's just been so calm. Now, as we look to the jet stream, we've got this big ridge of high pressure. That is why we've seen such calm, quiet weather this week. But as we head into the weekend, see how that high pressure just breaks down. We start to see some changes, and you start to see those jet stream winds, the highest winds in the atmosphere pushing in from the south. And with that onshore flow, that means active weather returning to the southern portions of the state. So right now it's calm. Temperatures pretty close to normal. We're seeing a lot of sunshine across the state, but again, that is going to change. Now, average temperatures this time of year are the coldest we see all year. We, of course, are only going up from here, climbing as we head into summer, of course, but we're starting to get increasing daylight, and those temperatures are going to start to warm once we get into February. But right now, we do expect it to still be cold, and that's been the case the first half of the month, extremely cold, and then those red days, those show you where temperatures were warmer than average. We sat there for about 8 days before things got back down closer to normal, and it has been a lot of moisture. Again, even though it's been dry for the past 5 days, you can see all of the days that we did have precipitation this month. And the same is true for Fairbanks. Started out really cold, warmed up, and then now cooling back down as well with that consistent rainfall. Now, as we look to the satellite to try and find this storm is going to bring this snow that we're talking about for Monday, you can't really even see it. It hasn't formed yet, and that's what's fun about forecasting in Alaska is we are forecasting storms that don't even exist. But we are seeing again that steady stream of moisture pushing in here from the south.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Now that we're looking at this. So just a little bit ago when we warmed up above that freezing mark, it was an atmospheric river. It was coming up from Hawaii.
Yeah.
Same situation?
Same situation. And so our temperatures are going to warm from the teens back to the low 30s. We are going to see a considerable warm up. The good news is, though, that moisture is going to come in before the real significant warm up. And it's part of the reason why snowfall totals are so high, because we're going to be out of the teens, back into the 20s. At that temperature, the atmosphere can hold a lot more moisture. And so it should fall as that pretty snow, and then temperatures continue to warm. Right now, you'll see on the 7 day in just a moment, but right now I do expect us to not get much above freezing.
Okay.
Nothing that's going to push us to 40 like what we saw last week.
Okay, I was like,
Yes.
I'm like, no,
Yes.
we love our snow. We want it to
Yes.
be pretty.
Yes, but good catch there. Yes, we're definitely going to see those temperatures warming as we get this air coming in from the south opposed to the north. Okay, so right now we've got that little bit of snow and wind left for the northwest corner of the state. That front is going to push east across the Brooks Range, dipping into the interior. Fairbanks, a little light snow heading into this weekend. And then we see some rain showers starting to show up in the Alaska Peninsula. Very wet conditions tomorrow in Kodiak. But that is not the storm that's going to bring us the moisture, at least not the main part of it. As we move into Saturday, into Sunday, you can see wet conditions holding in Kodiak. It's running into that high pressure. It can't move north until we get into early Monday morning. So Monday morning, we start to see that snow showing up on the Kenai Peninsula, and we start to initially also see snow in Juneau, although that is where we are going to get those temperatures above freezing, and you will see that transition from snow to rain in Juneau and across southeast next week. So looking at snowfall totals, nothing for Saturday, nothing for most of Sunday until we get to about midnight. We start to see light snow in Seward, Homer, Kenai, Soldotna, turning in Pass, and then we'll see that pushing north from there. Okay, I want to give a little asterisk, a little catch to this forecast. This is 4 days out. The storm has not even formed yet, and there are two models, the RPM, which we use as an in-house model, and then GFS, they've been locked in on this. The GFS has actually been locked in all week, and that's why it's been in the forecast. But two other models, the North American model, Canadian model, and actually a third, the European, they're not tracking this at all. In fact, they're going dry conditions for this time period. Now, this particular scenario is one that does typically bring us snow, and because the GFS has been so consistent, that is why I am also on board with the GFS and the RPM. But that's something we have to decide as meteorologists. You know, we've got these computer models that tell us one thing or another, and we can't just go with them because, one, they don't agree. But we take a look at those conditions and see, you know, how's the model doing right now? Does this look plausible? And right now, that's why I went ahead and said, yeah, let's expect some snow.
Okay, so, and you might be ready to talk about this in just a second, but one of the things we've now we talk about first alert a lot.
Yeah.
And it's usually these major storms could be dangerous situations, not quite what we're looking at here.
Yeah, this is not a life-threatening situation unless you're really driving crazy or stuck outside in the cold, you know, for a long period of time. This is a pretty typical Anchorage snowstorm for us. We're not going to see the wind. We're not going to see the ice. The only reason that we're attaching that first alert day to it is it's a big change. So, I mean, anytime you get over 4 inches of snow, that's enough. The plows are going to be out. Plow companies are going to be working. City crews are going to be on the road. You're going to want to shovel yourself probably to get in and out of your driveway. So it's enough of a nuisance in that regard, but also just enough of a change from what we've been seeing.
Because it's been so sunny.
Yes, so sunny. So again, Monday, and then you see it keeps on going. Okay, see that darker blue band there? That's where we're pushing up past 4 inches of snow once we get into Monday afternoon. So I don't think we'll see real significant impacts during the morning commute on Monday. It's just too early into the event. But by Monday evening and by Tuesday morning, certainly you want to be prepared for snow-covered roads at that point. Southeast, again, you will eventually also see the snow and rain, but not until Monday. Still sunny, beautiful tomorrow, high temperatures in the low 30s. Into the interior, a little light snow from that front I mentioned coming up over the Brooks Range. It's not going to be much. High temperatures, though, are warmer, 5 degrees in Fairbanks, 11 in Delta Junction. The slope also seeing a little bit of that light snow still lingering in Anaktuvuk Pass and Dead Horse and out west. Again, most most of that'll be done for you by tomorrow. Still seeing those breezy winds in Gamble, gusting to about 35 miles per hour. We will see temperatures still warm through the Aleutians, and we're still seeing that rain in Adak, Unalaska, Cold Bay, even a little bit of that wintry mix into St. Paul tomorrow. We will see very wet conditions in Kodiak, but that high pressure still holding for the rest of South Central. Very consistent, very similar to what we've seen here the past couple of days. That is true for the valley. That fog is still going to be around closer to the inlet. That's true for Anchorage as well. High temperature 22 after dipping into those mid-teens overnight. As we look ahead, again, it's still calm Saturday and Sunday, but come Monday, that's when we see those snow showers pushing in. Have a chance some of that lingers through the morning on Tuesday. Then we clear out from the precipitation, but you can see the cloud cover sticks around, and there are those warmer temperatures, 30 on Wednesday up to 32 on Thursday. And showing you that Fairbanks 7-day forecast. Again, temperatures, they're pretty warm, above zero most days, with that exception of Monday night into Tuesday morning. Little light snow, but not much to write home about, unless you want to write home about the fact that you're finally above zero. It just happened.
Which is let's face it, that can be a huge deal in Fairbanks.
It is a huge deal, yes.
So good for you guys. I mean,
Yes.
I look at some of those interior temperatures and I'm just so impressed by the people that live there consistently and don't complain the way
Right.
I would complain.
Right.
I would complain.
Yes.
So, well, I appreciate it, and I know you've got work to do because you do have a first alert day on Monday, so we'll keep track of that, not only our broadcast, but of course on our website. And speaking of snow,
Yes.
you know who loves snow?
Who's that?
Skiers.
Yes.
And much of the cross-country ski team for the Olympics this year have connections here in Alaska. So when we come back, we're going to sit down with gold medalist Keegan Randall and talk to her about the Olympics and what she's doing in the Olympics and kind of the impacts of Alaska. So that's coming up right after this.
Okay. I'll leave this for you.
And I've got
You want me
I've got
to
a
set it?
I've got a 10-minute interview. So you're before you. Yeah. Thank you, Melissa. That was wonderful.
Yes.
I hope my questions were okay.
That's great.
They
I love that.
Okay.
See, I really think that's the format.
right.
Works great. Bailey, can I borrow your jacket? Do you have your Alaska's News Source
And you
jacket?
need to give her your mic.
That's okay. I just have to wear it from the. No, that's okay.
You need to give her your mic. Oh, sorry. We're gonna need that. And welcome back to Friday's Potluck. And as we mentioned, much of the U.S. Olympic team, which was announced yesterday, much of them, 8 of the skiers on the U.S. cross-country Olympic team have connections to Alaska. So we sat down yesterday. Of course, we had to talk to Keegan Randall for her thoughts about the upcoming Olympics.
The 25th Winter Olympics are just weeks away, and on Thursday, the full list of cross-country skiers who will be representing Team USA in Italy next month was announced. The 16 athletes include 8 skiers with Alaska ties: Gus Schumacher, Hunter Wonders, Zandon McMullen, and J.C. Schumacher for the men, and Kendall Kramer, Rosie Brennan, Novi McCabe, and Haley Swerble for the ladies. I spoke with someone who has lived the Olympic experience, Alaska's own Keegan Randall, who won a gold medal at the 2018 Winter Olympics in Pyeongchang, South Korea. Randall grew up in Anchorage and now leads the Nordic Ski Association of Anchorage as its executive director. Here's what she had to say about the athletes headed to Italy.
There was a list of, I believe, 16 names that were, I think this is now the official roster today, that they announced for the cross-country ski team for Team USA. And if I counted right, half of them have Alaska ties, either born or raised here, went to high school, or have skied for either UAA or APU teams. But I was hoping you could just kind of react to that and just kind of tell us what you think when you see this list and what you think of our representation from Alaska.
Well, it's pretty exciting. We've all been waiting for this day when they would announce the 2026 Olympic team, and it was both no surprise, but still very exciting to see that 50% of the team are athletes that are training in Alaska. And in particular, we actually, I think, have real like Alaskans that were truly grown and developed here on the team. So Gus Schumacher in his second Olympics. I think we're really excited for what he can do now that he's had an Olympics under his belt. Hunter Wonders, coming back from retirement, pretty awesome. Zandon McMullen, who has really been coming up the ranks over the last couple of seasons. And then and then the women's side, some great stories. Great to see Kendall Kramer on there from Fairbanks. And then all the athletes train here on the Olympic team. So just think it's really speaks to the community that we have up here that just keeps putting so many Alaskans on the Olympic team.
And of these names, I mean, I'm sure you have experience. You've interacted with all of them, or if not all of them, most of them, right? Can you explain, or just kind of explain how you see them performing in next month in Italy?
Yeah, so I mean, I've been retired for 8 years now, but I did have the pleasure of skiing on the APU team with Rosie Brennan. So it's great to see her back on another Olympic team, and she'll be one of the veterans on the team. So I think not only is she poised to have some good performances, but she will really be that kind of that rock, that veteran that can help some of our first-time Olympians have a good experience at the games. So excited to watch her. Yeah, Gus Schumacher has had already, I think, one of his strongest seasons to date, and was won a race at the Tour de Ski, and just had really solid, consistent performances. And he's a guy who tends to do really well in February. So with a month to go until the games, I think there's a lot of good things for him to look forward to. But I think what's really cool about this team and this story is that so many of these athletes train together up here in Alaska. They have, because of what we have going on in Alaska, it has drawn some of the top athletes in the country to train at the APU Nordic Ski Center. And so to see that teamwork pay off, and to see that we have that kind of blend of athletes who have come to Alaska, athletes who've grown up here, all going out and representing, I think it's just going to be really exciting. And I think this is one of the strongest teams that the U.S. Maybe has ever sent to the Olympic Games. I mean, there are multiple athletes with chances at medals, and that's something we've not been able to really say before. So I'm just very excited to see, and I'm looking forward to calling the races for NBC. I'll be in Connecticut, so I won't be on site in Italy, but look forward to sharing the stories of these amazing athletes.
That's right. That's right. So just as an aside, are you calling every medal event for cross country, or just like do you know which ones you're doing, or?
I'm doing all the cross country events except for the final two races, which are both 50-kilometer races. So I won't be on the 50K call, but I'll be doing the skiathlons, the individual start 10K, the sprints, the team sprints, the relay, and I'll also be helping out with some of the Nordic combined events as well.
Oh, okay, that's good to know. Okay. And again, drawing on your own experience, and seeing as how far the U.S. cross country has come in the last 2 decades, or I mean, you can really, I don't know what sort of time span you want to put on it. U.S. cross country had never won a medal until I think you did with you and Jesse Diggins, and then didn't win a medal, but I think that was the second medal ever, the first gold, and so it was seen as a huge breakthrough. But how would you explain to those who don't know anything about the sport just this upward trajectory that the U.S. has been on in the sport of cross country over the years? I mean, starting with your own experience.
Well, the sport has changed a lot over the last 5-6 decades. So, we had a really good era of ski racing in the mid 70s, early 80s, kind of right around the time the sport was transitioning from one technique to two techniques. Americans were pretty innovative in that. But then, through the 80s and 90s, I think it was hard to compete against teams that were better resourced. And we didn't get the results that I think needed to believe in what was possible, because it was up against a pretty tough competition. So when we started with some actually really good performances in the 2002 Olympics, Nina Kempel had the top ever women's result. We had the men finish 5th in the relay. Chris Freeman, I know, had a top result there. Carl Swenson. So all of a sudden, it was like there was a glimpse of what was possible, and then it took a few more years of training and racing. But then as the results have come, you can just see that the athletes coming up have more and more confidence. And, especially with that gold medal in 2018, and then Jesse following it up 4 years later with 2 additional medals, it's like these American athletes now come into the games like believing that they can compete. And then the support has followed. Like, this team is also better resourced than the US has ever been. And I think that's really important in a sport like cross country skiing that is certainly about the training, but it's also about making sure you have good skis, that you have good recovery support and all those things. So I think things are coming together at the right moment. And from every indication, this trajectory is going to continue forward.
Yeah, I mean, certainly hope so. I got to ask this question so I don't take up too much of your time, but what, again, looking at your own experience, like if you could give any sort of guidance or advice to these skiers that are going to Italy next month. I know some of them have been there before, not been Italy, but some of them are former Olympians themselves, but some of them are also first timers for the Olympics. What sort of advice would you give them?
Well, I think the most important thing to remember is that while the Olympics is the biggest stage, that's certainly when the most number of American eyeballs are on the sport, and you can turn that into extra external pressure. It's another ski race. And for a lot of these athletes, they're racing on the World Cup. And the World Cup is essentially, like doing the Olympics every week of the year. I mean, they've raced against a lot of these athletes. So they've done the right things that have gotten them on the team. They just have to keep doing those right things, keep themselves healthy, make sure that they enjoy it and have fun, because I can't underestimate how I think if you keep your emotional energy in a good place, that helps with the physical performance. And just go into these games confident that they put the training in and just do what they're used to doing. I think there's a feeling sometimes that it's the Olympics, I got to pull out the performance of a lifetime, and you kind of set yourself up for unrealistic expectations. So just remember that you're doing all the right things. Go out there and give it your best. And at the end of the day, that feeling is the most important.
That's awesome to hear. Anything to say to those that are going to be watching, the fans of the, Alaskans here at home, they're going to be watching from afar?
Well, I know for us Alaskans, it's going to be some early mornings that these races will be on live. But given how strong our team is and how many good things could happen, I think it's going to be worth getting up early to see those races live. Because there's nothing about watching a race, watching things unfold, not knowing what's going to happen, and then should a big moment happen, then you get to feel a part of it. And I know for me as an athlete, from that gold medal in 2018, hearing the stories of people who are up in the middle of the night, and what they experienced when that gold medal happened. It's such a cool shared experience. So I recommend bank your sleep now, so you're ready to stay up and watch those races.
Yeah, set that alarm clock, or maybe just don't go to sleep, I guess.
Yeah.
I was one of those Alaskans watching you and Jesse in 2018 when you guys won that gold. That was pretty cool. So that was an amazing time. So yeah, awesome.
Yeah, and we have a freestyle team sprint. That's the event that we won the medal in. They didn't contest the team sprint in freestyle at the last Olympics because it flip-flops every games. So we're back to freestyle format for the team sprint, and I think both our men's and women's teams are going to be very serious contenders for medals. So that'll be an exciting event to watch.
Yeah, for sure. No, that I cannot wait. And yeah, we're gonna figure out the sleep situation, but we'll figure it out, I guess. Have you ever, I guess, one more question I had was, is there any thought for you as far as coming back to competition at all, or is that kind of behind you?
Well, surprisingly, it's been 8 years since I stepped away from full-time competition, and I have really come to understand why it was that I trained so much over years and years and years to be really good at the sport. Because while there's still some really good muscle memory there, the training is not quite as robust as it used to be. And so I am very happy to watch and cheer our athletes. I still, of course, love to ski. I get out there and do it as much as I can. I've got 2 wonderful kids that I'm getting on skis and following around. So my competition these days is jumping in our local Anchorage Cup races.
Oh, I love that about, not just Anchorage, but in Alaska, you get to see like Olympians like yourself just kind of casually out there, like jumping in these local races. Like, oh, look, there she is. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I have to say, watching Lindsey Vonn come back at 41 is pretty impressive. So I'm excited to see how she can fare in this games.
That was Keegan Randall with her thoughts on Alaska's Olympians. You can catch the Winter Olympics on KTUU starting February 6th. I'm Joey Klecka with Alaska's News Source.
As I said, I am a huge Keegan fan. I'm also a huge Olympics fan, so I cannot wait for that. So you want to check out, though, our In-Depth Alaska podcast. Now, in it, we do in-depth interviews about topics that would be impacting Alaskans, like a discussion the other day with an expert on Greenland and how recent conversations could impact our state. Check it out wherever you listen to podcasts. And we'll be back right after this. We're going to talk about that big storm down in the lower 48.
Talk for me. Mic check, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Mic check.
And welcome back to this Friday Potluck. With me now is Bailey Braun. She is our weekend meteorologist. And let's talk a little bit about this huge winter storm. We're hearing a lot about it on the national news, and I know a lot of us have relatives over there, or heaven forbid, thinking of traveling that direction in the next couple of days. Tell me what's going on over there.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's a lot of Alaska weather that's happening in areas that never see these kind of conditions. You know, the South is about to get a lot of freezing rain, and us here in Alaska, we are no stranger to those conditions. So I wanted to show you a few graphics that really highlight what's going on. This is our watches and warnings. So obviously, you've seen quite a few of these here in Alaska, but all across the South, you can see these highlighted with purple, yellow, or not yellow, purple, pink, blue, all for these winter weather advisories and winter storm warnings. Now, this includes snowfall as well as freezing rain accumulations. And also very impactful, we're seeing temperatures that are dropping down into what we would see in the interior, near 20 and 30 degrees below zero in these areas where, you know, these houses aren't built for temperatures like that. So I'll take you through exactly kind of why we're seeing this and how this is going to impact people. So with our jet stream forecast, you can see we've got a lot of convergence happening as low pressure up to the north, up to the north, that's converging with high pressure down into the south, and as this begins to converge, that's pushing up that air, and with that, that's where we're seeing a lot of this wintry weather moving in. Now, as of right now, a lot of this weather is stationed over Texas. That's really where we're seeing most of this active weather currently, but this is going to begin to move into the southern corridor of the United States into the overnight hours tonight and for Saturday. So for Saturday, a lot of these areas into even the Virginias, that's where we're seeing a lot of freezing rain, and that's really the biggest concern, not just the snowfall, but freezing rain. We've been talking about this big ice storm, and that's a huge impact. You know, we've dealt with freezing rain here in Alaska, and you can imagine how bad these roads get in just Anchorage and some of these other rural areas, but imagine taking conditions like that and putting that into the South where they don't have any snow plows or snow tires or salt, and it really becomes a hazard on these roads and just for homes in general.
Yeah, and I tend to think of freezing rain as being one, if not the most dangerous conditions for transportation and out on the roads, because everything is just so slick. That's when you start to see those really scary pile-ups that you get down in the lower 48 because, you know, as you said, they don't have the ice melt, they don't have the sanding trucks, at least not normally, so they have to kind of prepare. Luckily, you guys know what's coming, so.
Exactly, and that's why so many people are stocking up on all these goods. And you know, a lot of media stations into the South and even into the East Coast, they're making it seem like Armageddon with all these people going out to the store and stocking up on goods, but you really need to know like how important it is whenever you live in an area in the South where you're warm, and again, you don't have any snow tires or even all-season tires, so that's why you just want to kind of stay in your homes and you don't really want to adventure out, because people get into wrecks even in Anchorage with these slick roads. So being put in the south in a situation like that, that really shows how dangerous that is. Now, I do want to show you that frontal system associated with that low pressure that's spanning all across the east coast. So that's going to bring some heavy rainfall as these temperatures do warm over freezing, but then these overnight lows will drop back into below 32 degrees. So of course that's going to get very dangerous, moving all the way to the east coast and even spanning up into the northeast corridor as well. So really interesting to see how this weather is impacting almost, half of the U.S. And again, we see weather like this in Anchorage and Alaska in general all of the time. So it's really fascinating to see how this weather is moving.
And it, on the good side, it does seem like it's moving through rather rapidly. I mean, this map is already showing through Monday morning, and by this point, it's up in the areas around New York and Maine and Massachusetts, places that do typically get to see. Though earlier in the week, we were looking at the forecast and it looked like 5 to 8 inches of snow around New York. And I've got a friend that lives there. She's like, I don't want to hear that. I'm like, I'm going to tell you what I know.
Exactly. Well, and I've seen a lot of this model data. It keeps changing, and a lot of people are making fun of meteorologists in these areas because it just keeps changing, and it's hard to say exactly the timeline of when this is going to take place. But all this model data is changing, the timeline's changing, but it's now up to a foot of expected snowfall all across the state of New York. So for your friend in New York, that's even worse news. But yeah, it's going to be pretty brutal. But like you said, this is moving up into states that do typically see this kind of weather. They can handle that with different plows and the different materials that they have. But in good news, that high pressure is going to start to move in from the west, and as that moves on through more high temperatures and warmer temperatures above freezing. But I did take a note of some of these areas across the lower 48 right now, in areas like Bemidji, Minnesota. Their typical average high temperature for today is 19 degrees, and today we saw a low temperature at negative 26 degrees, and that's a low that you would see in the interior, not even a high temperature in the interior, but that high temperature in Bemidji was around negative 14 degrees. So yeah, it's pretty brutal out there.
Yeah, even areas where it's normally colder, you're seeing this. And this is also interesting. What I find interesting looking at this is that with that low pressure that's up in Canada, and you see all those little lines that are really close together, when you see those, what that's indicating is we're likely to see some very strong winds. We're getting that high pressure and low pressure right next to each other, and so that pressure gradient is squishing tight. And so once the storm moves, we're going to see some of that cold air from Canada. It looks like it's going to be dropping down pretty good into the northeast.
Yeah, exactly. And we talked about this freezing rain and how freezing rain is really a big deal when it comes to these hazards. And when you get high winds like this, it kind of looks like the movie Day After Tomorrow, whenever everything's kind of, that ice is just blown completely 90-degree angle. Yeah, it's gonna get cold, and that precipitation is really a big factor as to why this is such a big deal across the state. And then you see that low pressure system does begin to move just a little bit more south towards Maine, and as it does, that's a whole nother frontal system that's gonna bring a whole nother round of that snow and that rain. And yeah, it's just a lot happening all across the nationwide conditions. And yeah, so here's just a look at that Arctic air pushing in from Canada, pushing down all across the Midwest, and then that'll shift, and obviously that's bringing in more of that cold temperatures into areas like Minnesota, and even pushing into the northeast corridor as next week approaches. So while this storm system's really likely to move through by the weekend and kind of expire by Monday, we have this whole next round of cold air pushing in by Tuesday and Wednesday, and like you mentioned, that's whenever those winds are really going to be getting much closer together.
Yikes. Cold, the thing that you don't want is then to add in the wind.
Exactly.
Yeah, this looks like a major storm, and Alaskans, we look at these things and say, oh, we deal with this, that we deal with this all the time, but they don't. And so it is, it's one of those situations where really go on. I've got some really fun things coming up. In particular, we're going to show off Jackie's latest picture Welcome back to this Friday edition of the Potluck. Now, every week we get sent dozens of great photos from across Alaska, and really our weather team does its best to show off as many as they can, and we really have some great photographers here in Alaska. Jackie Purcell loves this part, so here is her latest edition of Picture Alaska.
Hello, Alaska, and welcome to this edition of Picture Alaska, nearly all aurora. So let's get right to it. We had a very big geomagnetic storm, and that created some pretty impressive displays. But how do you dress for an aurora when you're out there middle of the night or early in the morning? Yeah, you dress for the weather. This is Eva Kitty Cleveland. She is dressing for 50 below. Yeah, cover your head, cover your face, and make sure you got some good winter gear on. Now let's get to these beautiful displays. This is out of southeast Alaska. That geomagnetic storm did produce some very impressive displays as far south as Haines, as southeast Alaska, Hoona. This is over Koyuk, so we're going back into the interior. Pamela Baker Albert with an amazing look of the swirly aurora, and the green showing up, a little bit of yellows as well, and just a little faint pink if you can really look. But look at this one out of Koyuk again. Looks blue as well as green. You can see there's a snow go in the foreground, but there's a boat waiting for a different season in the background. Aubriana Otten, by the way, is just 9 years old. So thank you, Aubriana, for sending that in. The Northern Lights showing up over Bethel. Dorothy Bukowski got this nice shot. You can see the almost horizon-wide view of that aurora from yellows off to the left. It goes to pink and green, and then there's even a secondary band there, a green and pink one. Look at that blue. It's mostly blue and purples even showing up with that great star field. That's again in southeast Alaska. That from Jared Starr, very apt name for taking pictures of the sky in Sterling on the Kenai Peninsula. Jessica Lack seeing some pinks, even almost purples showing up there. Pastel colors for sure. Kind of looks spring-like, but still, we're in the midst of winter. This is from Nome, Alaska. Beautiful look at the star field, the snow-covered ground, and that's a pretty famous dredge. It's been in so many photos. It's the Swanberg dredge. Thank you to Crystal. Now going to Teller, looking up in the sky. There was a mix of clouds that night, but Casey Akbeak, you really got a great shot there, pink and green showing through those clouds. And in Bettles, nestled into the Brooks Range, Lily Michaels also seeing a bit of a swirl there, an amazing look at the stars, not a lot of artificial light there to obscure the view, so except from the cabin, another tree lit up, and a beautiful look at the lights from Delta Junction. Flower Cole sending that in, and she has a name that makes it reminiscent of summer, doesn't it? But look at the pastel colors Kathy Simpson saw when she sent us this photo of her aurora night. And over New Wixit, kind of looks like a shape in the clouds there, doesn't it? I'll leave it to your imagination as what that might look like. But thank you to Vanessa Napagiak for sending that one in and sharing it with everybody, the state of Alaska, and even more. Over Wrangell, back into southeast Alaska, Vivian Rogers showing us kind of like a starburst effect with her lens. And then the aurora, as well as the Big Dipper. Look over toward the right. You can kind of make out that Big Dipper star formation just outside the starburst. Jennifer Cabana, thank you for sending that one into our submit photos and videos. And we're going to kind of get into the Anchor Point area, also on the Kenai Peninsula. Elma Brown, also from the Kenai Peninsula. Homer, what colors were showing up? I mean, what an array from greens and brown, greens and blues and purples to these reds and pinks. That was from Jeremiah. And then even into the interior out of Fairbanks, Cody Griffin catching a blue, it was almost like a green rainbow across the horizon. And again, some pinks, greens a little bit there on the bottom, but the frosty trees just show off that aurora very nicely along with that star field. And from Norvik, Claudia Brown showing us what she was looking at in the skies. Now, I want to tell you that we appreciate all of you sending in your photos. We didn't use any videos this time, but we do love seeing both. So you can always go to the website go all the way to the edge. You'll see the Submit Photos and Videos tab. That's where you would click to send in your photos. Also, to view our online gallery. It is spectacular. So thanks for joining me for the Nearly All Aurora edition of This Picture Alaska. I hope to see you again online.
Thank you so much, Jackie, for that. Some amazing photos there. And as she said, go to our website, alaskasnewssource.com, and click that link in the upper banner. Well, let's shift our gears a little bit. It is a cruel scam that targets people who have lost their pets. Susan Campbell spoke with a woman who lost more than $1,000, and she shows us the red flags to watch out for.
Every single day, pets go missing. The search to bring them home is stressful. And scammers use that emotion, that desperate feeling, to cash in. Nala's a good cuddler.
She sleeps right here at night.
But a couple weeks ago, the 5.5-year-old pit bull lab mix got out. Valerie's been frantically searching for her ever since, posting flyers all over social media.
I've just been worried, sick about her.
So imagine her relief when her phone rang.
Got a call, individual portraying to be a Phoenix police officer. He said his name was Officer McGee. They have my dog.
She was safe, but supposedly had a broken leg.
How do I know that this is my dog? He sent me a picture. Picture looked, it was her. That I knew it was her. She had on her purple collar, her face, markings, everything.
When you requested it, was it pretty quick?
It was pretty quick. And I said, her name is Nala. He goes, yeah, she's responding to that name that appears, wagging her tail. And like he made it very, very, very believable that he had her.
Then the caller asked for money.
He was saying, well, the vet bill paid, it's roughly $1,700, but whatever you can come up with, we will take that, and then I'll put you in for financial hardship for the rest.
She borrowed $1,300 and
don't pay for anything in gift cards or cryptocurrency or gold. You need something traceable. The best way is credit card. That can protect you from all sorts of scams, including those gift card scams. So really be careful about that. Of course, the criminals prefer something untraceable. Also, find a sounding board, somebody that you trust. It's always a good idea to have at least that one person that you can say, does this sound real? Should I be doing this? Even if they're pushing you, they do tend to push it and make it very urgent. So even if they're doing that, you want an objective party that you can consult with before making any big purchases or money transfers. So that's one advice that AARP gives. And then the other one is change the way you think. And really that is because many of us grew up with the idea, at least in my generation and older, that if the phone rings, you have to answer it. Because at that point you didn't know who was on the other end. But really you don't have to engage. You're under no obligation in these modern times to respond to those calls or emails or texts from strangers, because a lot of them could be fraudulent. One option they say is to open your family's your contact list and add in everybody that you might need, and then you can change your settings to silence unknown callers, and that will send any caller that isn't on your contact list directly to your email. I like that one in some cases, but also, you know, from a business standpoint, that could be a bit of an issue. But definitely I do agree with those first two, and also changing our thought patterns. We don't necessarily need to reply to all of those messages. Okay, we're going to take one more quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the price of gold and silver. and welcome back to your Friday Potluck. Coin businesses are making sales thanks to the price of gold and silver. So if you've been holding on to those nuggets, you may want to cash in on them soon as Elena Thomas reports.
The volume has just grown exponentially with gold and silver hitting all-time world record high prices.
Tom Hollenbeck has been working with precious metals for over 40 years, but in that time, he says this is the highest he's seen gold and silver prices.
Closest where it was before when I was still in high school, was 1980 with the Hunt brothers when it ran up to $52 an ounce and then crashed back down to $14.
Today, silver prices are almost double what they were in 1980 at nearly $100 per ounce. Those prices are creating a steady line outside his coin gallery of people of all ages.
Today I'm getting a dos pesos and getting money for my mom. It's 90% gold.
The people that are selling are because they've never seen it this high.
I mean, if you're looking to sell your gold, now's a good time.
Economist Joe Craig says gold and silver are hedges against inflation.
If things stabilize and we don't go into recession or anything like that, prices, or at least in real terms, will come back down. It may not come down in actual values, but in terms of adjusted for inflation, they will come down if we stabilize a little bit.
And with the U.S. Mint pausing silver sales, Hollenbeck says he's beginning to restrict his own sales of the precious metal in case the price were to tank.
If you're selling, it's a great time to sell. And if you're buying at all-time historic highs, but there's a lot of people speculating it's going to go a lot higher.
Very interesting. And if you are interested, the price of silver today was $103.69 per ounce. The price of gold, $4,995.53. That's it for today's potluck. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you back here next week.